All right. Good morning, everybody. This morning, we're going to talk about how AI will fire the bureaucrats. So, let me be frank with you. Part of why I chose this topic this morning is the more I look at what's going on with the algorithms and everything. I think a lot of people are just getting tired of politics. They're getting tired of, oh, there's a new revelation in the Epstein story that's not going anywhere. There's new information on tariffs that's not going anywhere. There's so much kind of happening that is just not bearing actual fruit, right? There were some very interesting recent revelations around the Epstein case where it looks like Epstein was just straight up in direct collusion before he died, was just in straight direct collusion with the Democrats to basically offer advice and take advantage of Trump's nomination and election prospects during the time that the trials were going on. But again, that's something where, oh, look, here's a bunch of in the weeds wonk junk that, frankly, most people just don't care about. Tell you what people care about right now. At least it seems to me. There was just an episode from Jubilee where Luke Beasley, who's a shithead kid, professional leftist, grifter, and he went on to argue with a bunch of conservative boomers over specifically Maganomics, which nobody says Maganomics, right? Don't stop trying to make fetch a thing. Nobody is seriously using the term Maganomics in daily colloquial conversation. It's not appearing in major headline news, but you've got a handful of these sociopath leftist bitches who are trying to force it into the public lexicon as kind of a throwback to Reaganomics to place blame where it doesn't belong. Real quick, I see Cameron has joined the chat. Good morning, brother. Glad to have you with us. I know somebody's going to be excited. Ooh. So we've talked. So okay. So Beasley makes the argument, and he makes this argument because he's an idiot. He doesn't know things. Jumps up there. Well, who pays the tariffs? Who pays the tariffs? Well, yes, the importer pays the tariffs. See, it's not the forwarders that pay the tariffs. Oh my God. So everything Trump said is built on a lie. Oh my God. Oh. Yes. The importer is the one that actually pays the tariff. That's correct. That is technically and functionally correct. And you're trying to explain how this works to lay people. So the way this works, on paper, yes, technically, it is the importer that actually writes the check and pays the tariff. Fair play. And that means that the importer is making the buying decisions on whether or not to import from certain countries, which means that the various several countries external to the United States who are in competition with one another will have to make choices about whether or not they can afford to reduce their price in order to compete with their competitors, competing countries, not just, oh, there's another widget factory over there that makes the same widget I make. No, it's not there's another widget factory next door. There's another widget factory in Brazil or in Cuba, And suddenly China has to argue with them. And of course, through all of this, we're hearing noise about AI rising up and replacing this and that and replacing that and this. And I want to find a white pill, right? I want to find a little hope. So, if you buy American, you don't have to worry about tariffs. Tariffs are working for you right now. Because if you buy American, you don't have to worry about tariffs. Now, this is also one of the problems with the left. There's a great, Sargon of Akkad did a great coverage on a documentary recently about the difference between American thinking and African thinking. And this goes a long way to help you understand how it is, or why it is, that it's difficult to explain long-term planning, like what a tariff regime is about, to certain, primarily minorities. Do you know that African languages do not include words to consider the future? They don't have a word for the concept of maintenance. Long-term planning is not a part of their intellectual lexicon. That's why America has giant industrial factories and production, and we can understand, and similarly China, we can understand the idea that a great man will plant a tree beneath whose shade he will never sit. And then Africa is covered in tribes that never discovered the wheel, never built a seaworthy vessel. Right? Long-term planning is an important piece of that. And so this morning, I want to take a look at kind of the long-term outcome expectations as we are threatened, in theory, by the rise of artificial intelligence in this country. And I do have a white pill for you. But let's back up a little bit and kind of relitigate something that we've discussed from the last 30, 40 years. Sergeant Major says, when you are expecting to be eaten by a lion today, the future is not important. And that is a fair estimation. Yes. There's one of the Tremors movies is set in Africa. And at the beginning, there's this helicopter pilot that's flying Burt Gummer in, and he tells him, listen, mate, in Africa, he calls him Boot. They say Boot in South Africa instead of mate. Apparently it means brother or friend or whatever. Anyway, he says, listen, Boot, in Africa, every morning a gazelle wakes up and he knows that he's got to outrun the fastest lion, or he's gonna be dinner. And every morning a lion wakes up and he knows he's got to outrun the slowest gazelle, or he's not gonna eat. And the moral is, when you wake up in Africa, you better be running. Like, okay, that's fair play. Fair play. At the wheel says, kill the lion so there is a tomorrow. Maintenance. Good thinking. That is it. But that requires that requires it. It's okay. Actually killing the lion requires a little more long-term thought at the wheel, because most men cannot kill a lion with their bare hands. So you have to plan to kill the lion. You have to design a weapon, a spear, a bow and arrow, a firearm, something. You have to design some sort of thing to augment your personal lethality. And even then, that is not sufficient long-term planning. Now you have to consider the hunt. You have to find the lion or create a trap or an ambush situation to catch the lion in. So again, more long-term planning. And because their language doesn't include that concept, and it's actually fascinating linguistically, philosophically, the ethnography of African chronological intellect is alarmingly primitive and frankly fascinating to study, but it's a deep well that I'm not going to spend too much time on this morning. I'm looking at the long-term planning piece in particular here because we're talking about professional and economic prospects for the future of America. And I've got 4 kids, and I got to figure out how to help them have successful lives in the future. So, for example, it would be irresponsible of me to counsel them to go to work as clerks at the DMV. Those jobs aren't going to be there anymore, right? So the real white pill is that, let me go back to the thumbnail for a minute. The real white pill is that what's about to happen, and what already is happening, as I'll detail in just a moment, is low skill, low effort, low quality jobs are going to disappear. And because the tariff regime is, and admittedly slower than I'd like it to, but it is reshoring American manufacturing and American jobs. Tim Pool talks about this often with his skateboard company. He points out that it costs $35 to make skateboards in America, and until the tariff regime, it cost $30 to make them in China. And people don't understand in the process there. They cry about tariffs today. Like, yeah, but let me help you understand something, son. The skateboard company that builds their skateboards in China, and this is true everywhere. This is true for all industries, right? The raw material that doesn't come from China gets tariffed on its way into China. Then you pay for the manufacturing. And the skateboards are a particularly interesting piece in this because they're made from rock maple, which is grown in America. So we're harvesting lumber in America, sending it to China it costs money to send it to China, and then the tariff hits it when it goes into China, right? Chinese peasant slave labor turns it into skateboards, sends it back to America. And until Donald Trump, it was not being tariffed again on reentry. Now it is. And, in Tim Pool's case, the result has been that he's been able to take advantage of the rise in cost across the industry, across his competitors, and lower his prices. So he was selling on the argument, kind of like the old Papa John's. It's still the Papa John's business model, the better ingredients, better pizza, Papa John's, right? You've all heard that slogan. And let me tell you, when you're working at that, I'm using this as an example because I worked there in the late 90s. The corporate culture very much made it a point to explain to the managers, especially, listen, this is our niche. This is our business model. Our pizza is more expensive than Domino's and Pizza Hut. It's not as expensive as, say, a Mellow Mushroom or a Fellini's, right? But it is more expensive than Pizza Hut and Domino's. And that's not because they have some trick that lets them sell their pizza cheaper. We are making the deliberate choice to charge a little bit more for our pizza and to provide a better product. And in fact, part of their business model at the time, I think they've drifted away from it since John Schnatter left the company. But excuse me, their original business model, they owned the buildings, not leased. They owned the equipment, the ovens and everything. They owned the farms where they grew the vegetables. They owned the ranches where, they owned the whole thing. They even owned the trucks that moved it all around. So Papa John's business model actually put him in a position where, because he owned the whole process, he could charge significantly less than his competitors. But he also had much more tight quality control and did, in fact, produce a higher quality of pizza, basically because you're getting fresher ingredients, because you control the timeline better, you control the timeline more closely, et cetera, et cetera. And that was a great business model, right? That's using the process. That's using the process to create the market, and it's a brilliant piece of work. So, Timmy Pool's doing something similar. He doesn't own all the steps in the process, as far as I know, but since he's keeping all of the process domestic, the rock maples, the rock maples collected here, harvested here, right? The boards are produced by American workers in an American factory in America. There's no tariff in his process, by American. As long as that's going on, we are going to see more jobs onshoring. Now, there's another thing that is somewhat alarming that's happening, and that is there are a lot of farms across this country that have lain fallow for some time because these farmers have been paid government stipends to disincentivize the basically growing the crops, to artificially decrease supply and artificially increase costs. So make no mistake, part of the reason you pay more at the grocery store, yes, there is some tariff involvement there, and okay, avocados and coffee are getting hit because the only place in America that we can grow coffee effectively is in Hawaii. Is in Hawaii. In fact, there a lot of your grocery products are like this. We grow it better in America. We do a much better job on quality in America, but volume is a problem. For obviously corn, we're going gangbusters on corn, but coffee, we grow the best coffee in the world in Hawaii. But I don't know if you've ever been to Hawaii. When I lived there, I could turn left out of my driveway, and an hour and a half later, I'd turn left back into my driveway. Right? My point is, it's not very big. Sergeant Major makes a good point. We pay more because we have more to spend. That, yes. And that's a whole nother issue from what I'm talking about this morning. Let me get back to the onshoring of American jobs. And okay, so again, let me back up to the 80s and 90s, 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, actually really since the late 60s, maybe early 70s. And this trend just got worse and worse throughout the 80s, 90s, 2000s. We've been telling our children in America, go to college, go to college, go to college. If you don't go to college and get a 4-year degree as soon as you get out of high school, you're going to end up with a shitty job like a plumber. Well, couple things there. One, being a plumber might be a shitty job in a very literal sense on occasion, but that's big money, right? I mean, not huge money. I mean, plumbers make on average between $80,000 and $200,000 a year. Busy, high-skilled plumbers, they do all right. Same thing with electricians, carpenters, most of the construction business. And where does this tie into the fields? So many of these farms that have lain fallow for so long are being bought up by private interests to build data centers, right? There was a story recently about an aluminum manufacturing plant in the U.S. where the plant was purchased. It was some 1,500 jobs; those are gone, and it's been replaced with a data center that is the same physical size as the original operational plant, but only requires 20 employees. We're going to see some of that. We're going to see more of that happening. and I'm sorry if I'm a little scattered this morning, guys. This is a kind of a big topic with a lot going on. So next steps, the AI gets involved. Now that's where the data centers come in. Now the AI is about to get involved. And let's talk, what jobs did all those kiddos that went to college, where'd they land? Right? A handful of them. Right? Out of all of the Americans, which is statistically about half, that went to college throughout the 80s and 90s, many of them were told, I was told this, it doesn't even matter what you get your degree in, because once you've got that 4-year degree and you put that on your resume, it signals to an employer, I can show up on time and do what I'm told to do. And I can do it consistently for 4 years. That's all they're looking for, because they're going to train you to do whatever job once they hire you to do that job. Right? So, of course, you've got doctors and lawyers, really more doctors than lawyers, because with a law degree, there's okay. With a medical degree, you have to specialize in school. With a law degree, you specialize on the job. Like you can specialize on the job, or I'm sorry, in school as a lawyer, but you must specialize as a doctor in training. So those two kind of diverge a little bit in the way this works. But outside of very specific, highly technical type skill sets, there's a lot of people that got some kind of grievance studies degree. And, we joke about them ended up as baristas at Starbucks, but you know where they really end up? A lot of them, they end up at the DMV, the zoning commission, the planning office, right? They end up as court clerks. 80% of government clerical staff is female. About half of them are white, and the other half are mixed between every other color of the fleshy rainbow. Aaron says, false about just having a degree, not disagreeing with. It was not false. Sergeant Major says I was right. So, Aaron, that was in fact true, at least until maybe 2015 or so. It's becoming less and less true today. That's a more and more employers have started seeing through that smokescreen and understanding, if somebody's got a 4-year degree in random thing, they're actually dumber than somebody who was working during that time. That's something that more and more employers are talking about and writing op-eds about now. But no, it was very much true that throughout especially the 90s and the early 2000s, just having a 4-year degree was essentially a rubber stamp on any job that didn't require a skill block, because you'd be competing with people who didn't have a 4-year degree, and it was like, oh, well, this guy's got an extra data point. Oh, Aaron does bring up a good point. Without that rubber stamp today, there are a lot of automated resume systems that are being used. So you've got, Indeed.com, et cetera, all those job sites. And so companies that are hiring off those job sites, they're literally getting thousands of applications into their pipeline, and they're running them through AI systems to basically raise the cream to the top so they can skim that off and throw everything else away. So there is some competitive value there still, Aaron. You're not wrong about that. but that's only really true for the kinds of jobs today that are about to get automated away. Right? Traditional Aflac's a great example. You're all familiar with Aflac, the supplemental insurance company. They built their headquarters in Columbus, Georgia, because it's right next door to Fort Benning. It was Fort Benning. I think Fort Benning was one of the ones that got the name changed, but it's Fort Benning. God damn it, Fort Benning in Columbus, Georgia. It's where we train our infantry and some of our SF and airborne. Right, Fort Benning is an American standard. Well, because it's where we train our infantry, in the late 40s and early 50s, when Aflac was first setting up, they decided to build their headquarters in Columbus, Georgia. It's the biggest. Okay, Sergeant Major says the name changed back. Thank you, Pete Hegseth. The tallest building in Columbus, Georgia, until about, I think, 10 years ago, was the Aflac Tower. The brothers that founded the company wanted to be able to say we have the tallest building in the city. And that was great branding, great marketing. Oh, yeah, let's, hey, meet us at our office. Oh, well, where is it? Oh, that's easy. It's that one. It's the tallest building in the just go to the tallest building in the city. And the primary reason they built it there is because the military base was there. Because guess what soldiers have? To the perspective of an outside civilian business that needs a lot of cheap clerical labor, soldiers have wives that need part-time, temporary, high turnover work. The Aflac company literally said, hey, we're going to build next to Fort Benning. We're going to build our business next to this military base. And to make sure that we have the cheapest, most constant stream of fresh clerical labor, we're going to advertise part-time jobs, part-time entry-level clerical work to the wives of the soldiers on the base. And you talk about progressive. This wasn't so much progressive for political sake. This was, okay, we want to hire these women. We're going to build a daycare facility and private nursing lounges. I think Aflac actually originated the name the Butterfly Room, which is it's a semi-private room for nursing mothers to use during working hours to go and either nurse or pump, right? So they had a daycare in the building, right? But here's the thing. Those jobs work great for that demographic. And I'm not trying to beat up on you girls, but facts are facts. Women in the workforce today have not changed dramatically. You've got the whole feminist movement that tries to tell them all, hey, girls, you can have everything. You can have it all. You can be a girl boss and a soccer mom, and you can do it. No, you can't. You cannot. All right. Any more than I can grill burgers outside on the Blackstone at the same time I'm frying French fries in the kitchen. Yeah, sure. I could probably do both things at the same time if I adjust the temperatures for longer cooks and ruin all the food. But no, those are tasks that individually require a great deal of attention. There's a reason McDonald's has fry cooks and burger flippers. Okay? If you try to subdivide your mind across too many tasks, the more tasks you do, the poorer you will be at all of them. So the AI revolution. Okay, it's 8:00. I'm about to have to wrap this up because I got to get to Augusta this morning for a contract. I'm going to give this topic a lot more thought, and this will either be another show in the coming weeks, or maybe one of the deep dives. We'll talk about, women's work, women's place, and the fact that women are about to be out of jobs, a lot of jobs. The jobs that the AI can't touch. There's no job that the AI absolutely can't touch eventually. But the jobs that are the most vulnerable right now are those that are easily automated away because they are repetitive, low-skill task jobs. Those jobs women are the majority there in two ways, right? That's the majority of jobs that are held by women, and women hold the majority of those jobs. So, frankly, it's not that AI is about to wipe out the American workforce. It's going to wipe out the American women from the workforce. Here's your white pill. This can work very much in favor of the American population writ large, because one of the greatest factors in the decadal constant of wage stagnation, right? We've seen economic inflation against wage stagnation for decades. And a large reason for that is that by forcing women into the workforce and inflating prices beyond the affordability of one man going to work and raising a family on his single income, that has been a driver of inflation. We're going to be forced to adjust wages or adjust prices, or both, against a reality where your customers are single income people, single income families, and you have to deal with that reality. Because what's not going to happen, and we've seen the evidence of this in every feminist argument about equal pay for equal work, where they constantly complain that there aren't enough women CEOs, there aren't enough women in high power jobs. It's like, okay, how about this? 50% parity everywhere. Let's make sure that half of the CEOs are women, and half of the plumbers, and half of the bricklayers, and half of the shit shovelers. Oh, no, we don't want to. Exactly. You don't want to do those jobs. Men don't do those jobs because they want to do those jobs. They do those jobs because they want to do a job. Right? Men tend, when they're young, it happened to me, right? Men tend to grab the job they can get and then get good at that, right? You might, it's rare that you meet a kid, a boy, and a teenager, a young teenager. It's rare that you meet a kid that says, I want to grow up to be a plumber, or I want to grow up to be an electrician. That's the thing that I want to do, right? Unless, you're much more likely to hear, I want to grow up to take over daddy's plumbing business. Okay, gotcha, right? But plumber, electrician, those kind of skilled trade jobs, those aren't the jobs that a kid that's not already around that aspires to, right? But a lot of young men get that first job, and you're plumber assistant, electrician assistant. It's kind of an apprentice type of job. And then they excel in it. It's like, okay, maybe it's not the job I wanted, but it's the job I've got. So let me get fucking good at it. right? That's how I became an electrician. I looked at the jobs that were hiring in my town when I was, 18, right? 18 or 19. And Hill Phoenix was hiring, and they paid more than flipping burgers or, working at restaurants or whatever. And I said, okay, well, that's for me. And I went and got that job. When I walked into Hill Phoenix to apply to be an electrician's helper, I told the hiring manager that day, I said, listen, I don't own tools for this job. I know next to nothing about the job, but I understand that it's an on-the-job training entry-level position. And I will be here on time every morning, and I will work until the bell rings and longer if you'll let me, because I'm here to make a buck. And in the interview, I made it a point to ask questions about things like their 401k, their health insurance plans, and their advancement schema. And I asked questions. Okay, well, what do I have to do as I'm working? What do I have to do to prove that I know the job well enough to go from being a helper / assistant to being an electrician? And they said, you have to do this, this, and this. Okay, I can do that. Let's go. Right. And I did pretty well in that gig. But again, I didn't aspire to be an electrician when I was a kid. Right? When you're 8, 9, 10 years old, or even a young teenager, a little boy, you aspire to be an astronaut. Right? You might want to be a soldier or a police officer when you grow up, but you aspire to be something like an astronaut or a scientist. I want to be the next mad scientist, something like that. Doctor, right? Maybe if you've got them in the family, you start thinking about a legal career, right? Kids, by and large, don't fantasize about becoming skilled tradesmen. We can work on that. And the white pill is we're about to see the country forced into that. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a positive step in the right direction. All right, Patrick just pointed out that it's 8:07, and by the time I said that, it was 8:08, so I do need to go ahead and put a button in it. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.